Hi, I am Dr. Natasha Wallace and I'm a clinical psychologist. And today I want to reframe something I hear all of the time, especially from busy, high-achieving women and mums who are completely overwhelmed with everything that they are trying to juggle. And that is the feeling of self-sabotage. You know those moments where you say, why do I keep on doing this? I know I need to do something, but I just can't seem to follow through. Or I feel like my own worst enemy. And often, after these thoughts, is followed by guilt, frustration, and maybe even some shame. But what if I told you that you're not actually self-sabotaging yourself at all? And that self-sabotage is actually impossible? What if I told you that it's your brain and your nervous system that are doing exactly what they are designed to do? That those patterns that are keeping you stuck, that feel like self-sabotage, are actually your internal system trying to protect you. So today, I want to unpack the science, the psychology, and the deeper reasons behind why we do this. To explain why we push harder, we use more willpower, or forcing change just doesn't work for most people. And this is really important because in order to make real meaningful change, we need to start with understanding. So let's start with, what do people actually mean when they say they are self-sabotaging? It is that feeling that you are just getting in your own way. It's when you want to make a change, maybe you want to start exercising, or you want to speak up in more meetings, or set a boundary, or maybe it's even resting without guilt. But something keeps pulling you back into those same old habits. You procrastinate, you avoid the things that matter, you get overwhelmed and you shut down. Or maybe you overthink, you second guess yourself, or you feel paralyzed by fear. And so often we are really hard on ourselves for this. And then we respond by judging ourselves. We say, well, I'm just lazy and I am weak, and maybe I just don't want this enough. But this kind of self-blame actually completely misses the bigger picture, because what we call self-sabotage is often a protective response which is rooted in survival. And to understand what I mean by this, we need to talk about how your brain is wired, because your brain is an incredible survival machine. Its job isn't to make sure you succeed and do well. Its job is fully about making sure that you survive. And to do that, it's constantly scanning for threats, not just physical danger, but emotional and social threats too. And that includes things like failure, rejection, being judged, disappointment, or losing control. So this unconscious process is known as neuroception. It was a term coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, the founder of polyvagal theory. And neuroception is your nervous system's built-in threat detector. It's always working in the background below the level of consciousness. It picks up cues of safety and danger from your environment, your body, your thoughts, and it is incredible because it is happening without you even realizing it. You don't consciously decide, oh, this feels unsafe. It's your body that does it for you. And a really helpful way that I like to explain to clients and how they can think about this is, it's a bit like a surveillance alarm. It's designed to go off when there is danger, but sometimes it gets triggered by small movements which aren't actually a threat. And in the same way, your nervous system might respond to something like a difficult conversation, a new opportunity, setting a boundary, or resting when you're used to being productive. Your brain registers that as unsafe and responds with the same level of urgency as if you were under a real threat, like being chased by a bear. So while your logical brain is saying, this is fine, I want to do this, your nervous system actually sounds the alarm and says, nope, this is too risky and we have to shut it down. And this is why you might find yourself avoiding something that you know matters to you, because your body is not registering it as safe just yet. And once you understand this, it can change the way that you relate to those patterns of responding and behavior. Just know that it isn't a weakness. This is a highly intelligent system doing its best, trying to protect you, even if the threat isn't actually real. So I've mentioned the nervous system whilst we were talking about the brain. So let's dive into this a little bit more, because it's really key in the way we respond, we react, and we behave. So when your brain senses a threat, it activates your autonomic nervous system, which has two main branches to it: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. We can think about this through polyvagal theory. It helps us understand how our autonomic nervous system shifts us into different physiological states depending on how safe or threatened we feel. That process of neuroception, whether that rings the alarm or not. So this theory talks about three main states we might experience. And as we go through these, just remember it's not flaws, and we're not judging. This is survival strategies that your body intelligently uses to keep you safe from perceived danger. That uncomfortable emotion for your system is a real threat. So first we have the ventral vagal state. This is the state of safety and connection, the state of rest and digest, where you're socially engaged, and it is your parasympathetic nervous system functioning at its optimum. When you're in the ventral vagal state, you feel safe, connected, calm, and grounded. Your heart rate is steady, your breath is regulated, you're able to think clearly, you feel joy, compassion for yourself and for the others around you. This is the goal state. It's where we function at our best, where we can make decisions and take meaningful action. But we don't stay here all of the time, because life happens and stressful things happen, and then our system responds. So if your nervous system detects a potential threat, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, it activates the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. This is your mobilization state. It's where you might feel anxious or restless, panicky, angry, or on edge. Your heart rate increases, your muscles are tense, breathing gets shallower. It's where your body is gearing up to either fight or get out of there. And when there is an actual threat, we need this state. It's adaptive, but when it's constantly being triggered by emotional or social stress, it becomes draining and dysregulating. But if the system decides that fight or flight response isn't possible, or it's tried it and it hasn't worked, then it will shift you into the dorsal vagal shutdown. This is where your parasympathetic nervous system goes into freeze. It is your immobilization response. You might feel numb, hopeless, disconnected, maybe dissociated, or just like everything is too much. Physically, you might feel low energy, heaviness in your body, difficulty concentrating, or like you're moving through a fog. This is a survival response that says, let's conserve energy, let's go quiet, let's disappear, let's withdraw. And this isn't a conscious choice. It's the body's final attempt at survival by shutting down. Now, it's important to recognize that we do have another survival response that wasn't part of the original polyvagal framework but has now been incorporated, and that is fawn. It is often layered on top of other nervous system states, so where you have sympathetic and dorsal vagal shutdown at the same time. And it is a long-term strategy for safety in relationships. Fawning is often seen in people who've experienced chronic stress, relational trauma. It's when your system tries to stay safe by pleasing others. You become overly accommodating, self-sacrificing, or avoid conflict at all costs. But here is where it gets deeper, because these nervous system responses are often wired in our early childhood. For example, if you were raised in an environment where love or safety was tied to your performance, to being helpful, to being the good one, or staying quiet, then your nervous system learned that certain behaviours keep you safe. So now, when you try to act differently, when you try to rest instead of be busy or pushing through, when you say no instead of just going along with what other people want, your system panics. Even though as an adult, you know it's okay, your body doesn't feel safe. So it pulls you back into those old behaviours, not because you're sabotaging yourself, but because your nervous system is saying, this is unfamiliar, this is unsafe, so let's go back to what we know. And that's why it feels like you're sabotaging yourself, that you are at war internally. So now we understand why it's actually impossible for you to self-sabotage. What can you actually do when you're stuck in these survival patterns or these loops? Well, when you know what you want, but you can't move forward, or when you catch yourself avoiding, numbing, overthinking, snapping at your loved ones, or pulling back from things that matter to you, the most important place to start is to try to regulate your nervous system. Your nervous system is dysregulated because your brain perceives a threat, either physically, emotionally, and the truth is that you can't think your way out of a dysregulated state. So no amount of mindset work is going to help you with this in the long run, because when your nervous system feels unsafe, it will override logic every single time. And that's why nervous system regulation is essential. It helps your body return to a state of ventral vagal safety, or that rest and digest, where you feel calm, grounded, and able to engage with life rather than just reacting to it. So nervous system regulation might look like breath work, which will help to slow your heart rate and signal safety to your system, or grounding exercises that will bring your awareness back to the present moment. Gentle movement to help complete the stress cycle. Or you could try self-soothing touch, like placing your hand on your chest or your face or your heart space. And co-regulation, being with somebody who feels safe and calming, because your nervous system will respond to that. So these tools help you shift your state in the moment. They create that space for clarity, presence, and connection and decision making. However, nervous system regulation is only one layer of this process. To really shift those long-standing patterns that feel like self-sabotage, we often need to go a bit deeper. That is where trauma reprocessing and parts work can come in, because many of our survival strategies that keep us frozen, people-pleasing, overworking, or avoiding didn't just start yesterday. As we've spoken about, they were shaped by our past experiences, by moments when it wasn't safe to rest, to say no, or to take up space. And until we bring healing to those parts of us that still carry the fear and those beliefs, we'll keep looping back into those protective patterns that no matter how many self-help books we read or habits we try to change, will still continue to pull us back. This is where internal family systems can be so transformative. IFS therapy is based on the idea that we are not just one whole self, that we are made up of different parts, which is referred to as multiplicity. You might have a part that wants to take action, another part that is terrified you'll get judged if you get it wrong. Each of these parts formed for a reason, often as a way to keep you safe, meet a need at the time when you didn't have many other choices. When these parts are in conflict, it can feel like you're self-sabotaging. But really what's happening is that one part is trying to move forward, another is trying to protect you by slamming on the brakes out of fear. And IFS helps you to bring compassion and curiosity to those parts. It allows you to connect to your true core authentic self, that calm, confident and grounded person that you are. And it helps those protective parts feel heard and safe. And when your parts feel safe, they don't need to sabotage anymore. So instead of just pushing through or shaming yourself, try curiosity over criticism. Ask yourself, what part of me is feeling afraid right now? And what is it trying to protect me from? And you can incorporate this with some of those nervous system regulation techniques that we talked about. So when your body feels safe, your brain allows more flexibility, more confidence, more decision making. Use those tools, the grounding, the breath work, and the movement, as they will help to signal safety to your system. You can also try reframing your patterns. So try replacing terms like, I always sabotage myself, with a part of me is trying to protect me from something, and that's scary and unfamiliar. And what can I do to help myself? And finally, self-compassion. And this is key, because healing isn't about being better, it's about feeling safe enough to do things differently. And it's not about fixing yourself because you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you. It's about meeting the parts of you that are scared, tired, overwhelmed, meeting them with gentleness and compassion instead of judgment and criticism. Because when those parts feel understood, when they're no longer fighting for control or bracing for shame, that's when they begin to relax, and that is when real change happens. Self-compassion turns healing from like a performance into a relationship with yourself, where you can finally feel safe in your own body, with your own thoughts and with your own choices. So if you have ever said, I know what I should do, I just don't, or I can't do it, I want you to know that you're not alone, you're not broken. You're likely dealing with protective patterns that were wired in your system for a really good reason, but they are no longer helping you. And that awareness of this is the starting point for lasting, compassionate change. So the next time you feel stuck or you catch yourself falling into old habits, try pausing and ask yourself, what part of me is afraid right now? And then instead of forcing or trying to fix it, offer that part a little bit of compassion and understanding. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Natasha Wallace, an HCPC registered clinical psychologist, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at drtasha_psychologist and on my website at www.revive-psychology.co.uk. This video was made in collaboration with Mindfriend. They are an educational, digital platform combating misinformation of mental health through accredited professionals. I will see you in the next video, and like, comment and subscribe if you found this helpful.